Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
This is a recording of a Shabbat sermon with Rabbi Shoshana Cohen.
I just want to introduce our scholar in residence for this weekend, Rabbi Shoshana Cohen, who is going to be speaking to us now and then again around, let's call it 12:30 at this point, in Dorf Nelson Chapel downstairs. Rabbi Shoshana Cohen currently works for the Hartman Institute in Israel. Many of you probably have heard of the Hartman Institute or have learned with people who teach at the Hartman Institute. But the way that I know Rabbi Shoshana Cohen and what makes her so special to me to bring to this community is that she was my teacher at the conservative yeshiva when I was living in Jerusalem. And though you might not have heard of the conservative yeshiva, but you've heard of Hartman, when we learn with people who impact us in ways that make us teach in certain ways, you then want your teachers to come and show your students, show your community where your teaching style comes from and the impact that your teachers have had on your learning and on the way in which you teach. So it is my honor and a privilege to bring Rav Shoshana Cohen to Temple Beth and to have her be our darshanit this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, and I have a lot of nachas being at Beth. I always say, who's here remembers there were like amazing lemonade fountains. That was a thing in Kiddush. I don't know. We didn't have that at B'nai David, but you had it at Beth when I was little. And I really liked the lemonade fountain. Sorry, they don't have that anymore. But you should bring it back. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and it's wonderful to be back here, and it's wonderful to meet so many students. Mazal Tov, you are amazing. And it's also just so wonderful to be able to keep teaching Torah in these beautiful ways. I came here from Israel. I've been living in Jerusalem for 20-something years after I lived in Los Angeles. And so part of what I'm going to talk about today, just for a few minutes, and we'll have more time to learn together in a little bit during Kiddush, is what it's been feeling like being in Israel, in light of some of the things that we see in this week's Parsha. So I want to just start a moment. You have just crossed the sea, all right? You spoke about this really beautifully in your drash, right? But I want everyone to take a moment to imagine that you were there at the sea, all right? You've just crossed the sea. What does that feel like? What does that feel like? What? Who said shocking? Okay, it was shocking. Why was it shocking particularly? Supernatural. But that was not where I thought things were going, okay? Any other feelings that people have? I just crossed the sea. What does it feel like? Surreal. What? Surreal. Disbelief. Okay. Tired. For sure tired. Okay. Yeah. Fearful. All right. Why are you fearful? You don't know what's coming next. Okay. Great. All right. One more. Anyone else? Really? Yeah.
Seeing all these dead people behind you.
Yeah, that also is one interesting, right? I got out, but I'm looking back, and it's really kind of terrible what's happened to the other people, right? I've been saved, but, what is left in the wake of my being saved? Great, okay. I think that one of the things that is particularly remarkable about the experience at the sea is that we go from this sense of extraordinary danger. We are sure that we are all going to die, and in a rather short period of time, we switch, and now we've been saved. Right? It gets more complicated after that, but at that moment, that's why I wanted you to focus on that particular moment of when you just got out. I was sure I was going to die. We were all sure we're going to die, and in a minute, we get saved. Right? That's one of the aspects that I want to focus on. And I actually want to take you back. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember Parshat Noach, right after the 7th of October. It was actually quite insane. I had a friend who had a bat mitzvah that Shabbat. We had a bat mitzvah, actually, Shabbat Breshit, and also Shabbat Parshat Noach. And they did the bat mitzvah, even though it was crazy and we didn't know what was going to happen, and many people were in Miluim, and we hadn't fully processed anything about what had happened around the 7th of October. And in Parshat Noach, they held it together, and the world was about to, right? Parshat Noach is about the world really falling apart, right? And yet, we still held it together in some sense. And the Haftarah of Parshat Noach is actually from a section from Isaiah 54. And I distinctly remember hearing these words, and I will read it to you, and I'll read it back in English. Barega katon azavtich, uverachamim gdolim akabtzech. In one moment, one small moment, I left you, says God, and an enormous amount of mercy, I will bring you back. B'shetzef ketzef, histarti panai, right, very quickly, in 1 second, I hid my face from you. B'panai rega mimech, uvechesed olam rechamtich, and in this amazing mercy, a mercy that will last forever, I will have mercy on you, and I will redeem you. Now, at that moment, around Parshat Noach, you can think where we were right after October 7th. So much of what we were looking for was what I call that shetzef ketzef geula, that redemption that's going to come to us in a moment. Right? So often, when we're in a particularly dark place, the kind of redemption that we're pining after, that we're wanting, is that redemption in which, in 1 second, everything can change, right? We want to get out so badly from the situation that we are in, that we believe, we say, you know what? In a moment, everything can change. In a moment, everything is going to be different. That's the kind of redemption, often when we're in the darkest place, that's the kind of redemption that we're actually seeking. And I think that the sea, in some sense, represents that kind of redemption. That redemption that happens in a moment, when I'm shocked. I never believed that it was really possible, and here, in a moment, everything can change. And at the same time, I think, since then, as time has gone on, there's another model of redemption that I think has been emerging that may give us some guidance. That's not to say that I've abandoned the notion that who knows what's going to happen. Maybe everything's going to change on a dime. But since we've been in this situation for a really long time, it's gotten much more complicated to even believe that things can change or that they're going to change. And to that, I want to introduce a different model of redemption, which is really the model that I think that we see, the model of the Nile, the model of Egypt. And if I asked you, how did you feel when you got out of the sea, right? I want to ask you, how did you feel, let's say, in the 4th plague in Egypt? All right? What did that feel like? Imagine, remember what's happened. God keeps saying, okay, Moshe, go tell Pharaoh, let the people go. All right, you're thinking, all right, it's going to happen. We're going to do it, right? And then what happens? Does it work? No. Not so much. Right? Go, let the people go. Pharaoh's like, okay, you can go. Oh, no, just kidding, you can't. Right? Oh, I'm going to give you this plague. All right, okay, surely we did this plague. That's going to work. Pharaoh's going to be convinced, right? We're done. All right, we're going. We're getting ready. Imagine what that must have felt like over and over and over again. To really believe, and I think sometimes because we know the plagues like from the Seder, we imagine it like happened really quick. Oh yeah, blood, lice, blah, blah, right? Really quick, it's done. But this is a very long and drawn out process, right? Over and over again. There's a hope that some redemption is going to come. There's a hope that we're going to get out, and that hope is dashed over and over and over again. And I remember we started this is not a big memory, this was a few weeks ago, but we actually started reading these chapters in Exodus, the beginning chapters of Exodus, when we were in the middle, we were starting this second hostage release process. And I thought that there was something very poignant about that, because we knew going into this process of a hostage release, that would mean that there would be these moments of seeing the faces of all of these people coming home, and there would be an enormous amount of manipulation, and we would be up and down and thinking about the people that we've lost and thinking that people are coming home, up and down, back and forth. That resonated. There was a poetry that I saw in that feeling, that sense of the plagues, of one plague after another, happy that maybe something is going forward, feeling like it might go back. And in order to think about that, that model, perhaps the Egypt model, if we will, I want to bring just one little piece of a midrash that's from the Talmud Yerushalmi. And it explains a little bit how the redemption is going to happen. Now it says, it tells the story of these two rabbis who are walking around, Rabbi Chia Rava, Rabbi Shimon bar Chalafta, havu melchim behada bikata be'arbel bekritzata, vera'u hashachar shebaka ora. So you have these two rabbis, and they're walking around in the valley of Arbel, which is an area in the land of Israel, in the Galil, and they're walking around, and they see the Ayelet HaShachar. Okay, Shachar, that word Shachar means morning. Ayelet actually technically means the English word, it's a doe, right? A gazelle, thank you, right? The gazelle of the morning, right? So it says they're walking around and they see the gazelle of the morning, all right? We're going to talk for a minute. What is that gazelle of the morning, all right? But for now, you're going to keep it as the gazelle of the morning. So they're walking around in the morning. They see the gazelle of the morning. And Rabbi Chia says, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Rava, the Rabbi Shimon bar Chalafta, Bi Rabbi, Kachi geulatan shel Yisrael. This is how the redemption of Israel is going to be. Batchila kim'a kim'a. Kol ma shehi olechet hi rabba ve'olechet. Right? This is how redemption, something about that gazelle of the morning. He sees that. He's like, you know what? That's how redemption is going to happen. Bit by bit. And as she goes, it will continue to go and get brighter and bigger. All right? So they're walking around the morning. They see this thing. And he says, you know what? That's how the redemption is going to be. What does it sound like this Ayelet HaShachar is, that morning gazelle? What do you think they're looking at? They could be looking at a gazelle. Probably not. Right? So what are some other options? What might they be looking at? What do you imagine they're looking at? What? Sunrise. Right? Probably one opinion is Ayelet HaShachar is the sunrise. How does sunrise work? There are bits of light that happen before the sun comes up. And most interpreters see the Ayelet HaShachar as those first rays of light. So essentially what he's saying is, look, the sun hasn't come up yet, right? The full redemption, we are far from there. This is the time of Roman oppression. It's really hard to see how this game of oppression is going to end. But just like those first rays of light are telling us that eventually there's going to be a sunrise, so too we know that there are going to be these little signs that are going to happen. And sure enough, they're going to happen, little bits of light that are going to accumulate into an enormous redemption. And that's why the rabbis think back and they say, right, like Esther, which was way before us, that was the beginning of a time when the Jews started to be redeemed. And they imagine redemption as being a very long process, something that is not shetzev ketzev. It's not going to happen in one moment. It's going to happen in bits, in rays of light that are going to get stronger and loud and more powerful. But I want to add one more piece, and with this we will end. There is actually another opinion which happens to be rejected here, which is that Ayelet HaShachar is not the dawn, but it's actually the morning star, which is the planet Venus. Has anyone been looking recently at the stars, planets? Yes, the planetary parade. Some of us nerdy people know about it. There have been, right now, in the past couple of months, if you looked up in the sky, you can see 4 planets. If you're just looking with your naked eye, you can actually see 6 planets. If you're looking with a telescope, this is very unusual. And if you look right after sunset, Venus is incredible. It is very, very close, and it is very, very bright. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And it's very, very moving. Now, when Venus, the funny thing about Venus is that Venus is actually both the morning star and the evening star. Meaning Venus comes out at different times, not at the same season, but it comes out both after sunset and it comes out in the morning. I know I'm geeked out with the astronomy, but right, I just want to think about this for a moment. All right, if Ayelet HaShachar is this extraordinarily beautiful and bright star that comes up in the morning, but what also happens to Venus when it's the morning star? It falls, like it goes away, and then it comes back the next day, right? And then we see it, and it's beautiful, and it's bright, and then it leaves again, right? And there's something about that, of this star which shines extremely brightly, and then it's gone, and then it's going to shine again, and then it's gone, which I have found to be a very powerful image when I think about the redemption, the possibilities of redemption that we're seeing now. When I see the hostages reuniting with their families, you see their smiles, and that Venus, right? That Ayelet HaShachar, it's you can't avoid it. You can't see anything else. It's extraordinarily bright, and yet those moments are very fleeting. And they're in the context of an enormous amount of darkness and destruction. There's a zigzag, right? I think this is not in each of the images that we talked about, right? Either the instant that happens at the sea or the drawn out Ayelet HaShachar of the dawn. Each of those assume to some degree that redemption might be long, but it'll be linear, right? But what we're experiencing now is something much more complicated, and possibly that's how actually things really work, which is that redemption is a zigzag. It's not a linear process. And what we need to be able to do to keep moving in these times is to see that Ayelet HaShachar and say, you know what? It's possible. The light exists. And even when it goes away, I know that it's going to come back. And I know that we're going to keep, hopefully, moving, even though there will inevitably be many setbacks along the way. And I think that this is also a call to us, because I know that, certainly for me, and I would imagine for a lot of you, this is a time of such enormous despair. And what I want to do often is lie in my bed and not get up and not try to move anything forward. And that Ayelet HaShachar says to me, you know what? The light is there. Get up. You need to get up, and we all need to get up and try to keep things moving. And that's my bracha also for us, that we'll be able to acknowledge those moments of despair and allow that star, that Ayelet HaShachar, to help us keep moving forward.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.